Good afternoon. Well, I guess it's still morning now. This is Ladina Boo with Trials and Triumphs. We talk about probably not the most fun things in life, but we've all gone through bad stages, and we just need to help one another get through it. Today, my guest is Becky Coad. She's a minister with Crosswalk Ministries. It's a ministry she and her husband Dennis Coad started a number of years back, helping homeless people. Started out basically homeless,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yes. We worked on the streets for about 2 years
Hmm.
of Springfield, and we actually went into the camps, the homeless camps, and took them supplies. And it was an awesome time in our lives. It was the best time. I
Dennis
so
was one.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, he was never afraid to go into the homeless camps or any of
No,
that nature.
not at all.
He'd
Not at all.
he'd been homeless himself, and he'd been in prison a couple of times, and the Lord got a hold of Dennis, and life just changed dramatically,
It
didn't it?
did. It
You
did.
know.
And I'm glad it happened. At the time, I was very I just didn't know what to think because it was such a change in him.
Hmm.
And it was hard for me to get used to, but it was a good change.
Yeah.
And
Well, my son died December the 29th of 2019. He was 43 years old, and he had a massive heart attack, and I'm still suffer with the loss of my son. Well, Becky's husband, Dennis, um, awesome man. He was so funny. I love the man completely. He died December the 21st,
yeah,
2019, didn't he?
yes, right
Yeah.
before your son. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So what all happened with Dennis? What?
Well, I had been sick. I had gone to Kansas City, and when I came back, I just was really, really sick. And I don't get sick too often. And so I came home and I said, I got to go to bed. I'm sick. So for about a week, I was pretty much in bed, and he took care of me, brought me soup, brought me whatever I needed. And then I got over it and I was feeling good. And then he came down with it. And when he came down with it, it hit him hard. He got to a point where he was wheezing and he could hardly breathe. It was all in his chest. He couldn't sleep at night. He couldn't lay down. And I finally talked him in. He was stubborn, but I finally talked him into going to the hospital. Me and his son both talked him into it. And so I'll never forget that night when I was going to take him to the hospital. He looked at me straight in the eye and he said, I'm going to die. And I said, no, you're not. I said, you are going to live and declare the works of the Lord. And he just kind of shook his head like, well, that's what I've taught her. So,
Hmm.
so as that all happened, he said, you're going to have to call an ambulance. And I said, okay, I'll call an ambulance. So I did, and they took him to the hospital. And that was on a Thursday night. Uh, we stayed with him. We promised that we would stay there with him, and we stayed up at the hospital with him. And on Saturday morning, when I went in his room, there were a lot of doctors and a lot more machines in there. And I thought, what is going on? He was in a coma, so he didn't even know that I was there or anything, which, you know, some people say they do know, and some people say they don't. But I believed he knew I was there. And he one time that he was in there, he was coming to, and I told him, I said, you're going to get through this. You're going to get the best care you can get here, and we're going to get through this. And he just kind of opened his eyes and looked at me, and tears started rolling down his eyes, and he shook his head. And I just thought, okay, that's just some reflex or something. But I believed that at that time he knew that he wasn't going to make it. And I stood on his faith that he had, because Dennis had tremendous amount of faith.
Hmm.
And no matter what doctors told me, no matter what, I stood on Dennis's faith, and I just didn't hear it and didn't believe what they were saying.
Hmm.
And so they came to me and told me that he was going to have an operation to bring his oxygen levels down. I don't know the name of it, but it's where they bypass the lungs. And so he made it through that operation. And about an hour after he got out of the operation, I was waiting to go in and see him. And he had a massive heart attack.
Hmm.
from the operation. It was just too much on him. And I just remember when they came and got me, and I thought they were going to take me back to see him, but they took me into a small room and a chaplain was in there. And he said, your husband's, they're working on him now, but it doesn't look like he's going to make it. And I just remember when they finally told me that he didn't make it, I just kept screaming, it's not supposed to be like this. It's not supposed to be like this. And that moment right there, my whole life changed in an instant. Um, I I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I was not expecting it, and I became numb. And I stayed in what they reading books now, what they call the widow fog. And I was in that for at least 6 months. It
Yeah.
seemed like I didn't know what I was doing, where I was going. I just kind of sat there and just, I didn't know how I was going to get through it, but I knew that God was still with me. God never left me. And I just hung on to the faith that Dennis had that I would get through this. And today, it's a little over 2 years, and I'm better, but there's not a day. There's not a day that doesn't go by that he doesn't cross my mind at least. I don't know how many times. I think about him quite often. And but I am doing better now. I'm stronger now. I have to move on. That's what he would want.
Yeah.
He would not want me to sit on the couch and feel sorry for myself. He would want me to move on.
No, he'd come down and kick you in the
He
backside.
would. He definitely would. You are absolutely right. And one thing that he always said, when he'd come across people that were grieving, it's sad for us, but for him, he's up there in the glory of God, and he's up there living his life and loving it. And I just know that he is the happiest he has probably ever been in his life. And I know that one day I will see him again, and that is a nice reassurance. And we'll be walking the streets together,
Right. But
So,
even a person of faith, though, goes through so many different stages when they
yes.
lose someone.
Yeah, I was mad.
Yeah. You're probably mad at God,
Yes, I was.
mad at Dennis,
Yeah.
mad at all the doctors and the
Yes.
hospitals and everybody else,
Yes, anger did come up, and I kind of pulled away from God for a little while, and I was like, how could you do this to me? We had so much that we had planned for the rest of our lives, and Dennis was 11 years older than me, so I kind of in my heart knew that he would probably go before me, but I didn't expect it that soon. I figured we'd have a little bit more time together.
My son, he made me crazy over the years, but he was my best friend, and I love that boy immensely.
Yeah.
And I know I was angry when he died, and I was angry at the police officers, and I was angry at the store that he was parked in front of. Excuse me, I have a horrible cough. But they didn't call the police. They'd seen him out there. It was like 4 hours later before they called and said, "Hey, there's a guy laying in his truck in our parking lot."
Oh my.
And so I was very angry about that. And there are still days that I deal with anger, but I've kind of moved past that because I knew my son, knew I loved him, and I knew he loved the Lord. He'd fallen away over the years a little bit, but if anything was coming up, he always called and said, "Pray, Mom. I need you to pray."
Yeah.
And the first time he went to prison, he's like, "Mom, you need to pray for me because I'm in hell right now and I don't want to go back."
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
had that understanding of, let's get our act together and move on. And
Correct.
he was doing really well when that happened. But it's still difficult to work through that.
It is.
Yeah.
And, each year I relive those 3 days. Like I'll look at my clock and I'll say, okay, 2 years ago at this time, I was sitting in the hospital room, waiting for him to wake up, and it takes me back every year. And I feel like I'm a pretty strong individual, and I can get through pretty much anything, but this has really put me in a hard place and a dark place at times. And I miss him dearly, and we were two peas in a pod. And he was my everything. He was my protector. He was my reassurer. He was everything to me. And to lose that in an instant, and unless you have been through it, you don't know how it feels.
Yeah.
And I get frustrated when people say, "You're doing good, and you'll get past this." No, I don't think I'll ever get past it. It'll always be there, but I think that I have learned to deal with it
Mm-hmm.
and to move on. And I'm trying to move on with my life. What is my life without Dennis Coad?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have to ask myself, because we were together 28 years. So 28 years of my life was Dennis and Becky.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just Becky.
Yeah.
So it's been a big adjustment, but I think I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And
I know whenever we would talk over the years and stuff, and I'd say something to Bill or one of the other ones around me, and I'm going, yeah, I have to go to Dennis and Becky's. It was always a group,
yeah,
There was,
exactly. It was
yeah.
never I'm going to Dennis's. It was always Dennis and Becky. And that's being in our ministry and being on the streets. That's how we were known. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's Dennis and Becky. They'll help you,
Mm-hmm.
And so, Dennis had a passion to help people.
Yeah.
And I walked alongside that. And he had a vision of what he wanted and how he wanted to help people. And I walked right alongside him. Things are different now. He had a way of handling people better than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been an adjustment for me. I'm still moving on with the ministry, doing what I can right now, but it's not the same without Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
Well, Dennis knew how to associate with the people, whether it was the homeless or the ones coming out of prison, and he had a massive love of bringing others to Christ.
Yes, yes,
and he spent his time doing that.
yes,
So, but this is Trials and Triumphs. So,
yes. And I love that title. That's how it, that's how it should be. You go through trials, but
mhm.
there's always a triumph.
Yeah,
Always.
you can't
And
let the world knock you down and leave you there.
no, it doesn't do any good because you're not getting anywhere. You're just sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about the first year. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be around people. A few people I could reach out to, but for the most part, I just wanted to be alone and deal with it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good either.
No, I'm not.
So, until I finally found some people that had been through similar, losing somebody like Ladina and another friend of mine, it really helped me walk through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thank God
Well,
for those people in my life.
yeah. Well, there's so many stages to grief, and they try to quantify it. Okay, here's 5 stages of grief. Here's 7 stages of grief, or whatever. And they get fairly close, I guess. Because when somebody first dies, you go into that shock and denial.
Mm-hmm.
How did this happen?
Right.
He's not really dead. They're just telling me this. He's
I,
still on the operating room.
yeah, I expected him to walk in the door any day, and I've had dreams of him walking in the door, and if anybody was going to do it, it would be Dennis.
Yeah, we always knew he'd haunt us when he was gone,
Mm-hmm.
didn't we?
Yeah, yeah,
He wants to make sure we all stay in line and do what we're supposed to.
exactly, exactly.
And then you go through that pain and guilt stage.
Yeah,
Why did I get well and he didn't?
right,
And this hurts so much. Why am I having to go through all this pain, Lord?
exactly.
And a lot of people don't understand really that there's no time limit on your grief.
No,
When somebody tells you to move on after a year, fine, maybe you're in a position to do that. Maybe you feel strong enough to do that, but don't make them push you into some,
right, exactly,
you know.
exactly. And for those that say, move, it's been a year, when are you going to get over it?
Mhm.
Well, for your information, I'm never going to get over it. It's always going to be there. He has a special place
Mhm.
in my heart, and he's never going to leave there.
Yeah.
And
That's the thing with me. Everybody's like, well, he's been gone 2 years. And it's like, so?
Yeah.
He was with me for 43 years before he passed.
Well, and
And
here's the thing. Yeah, it's been, you know, it's been 2 years. Well, what's 2 years to a lifetime that you expected to
hmm
have?
right.
You know, it's just going to take, you know, a while, and people need to realize, you know, unless you have been through grief to this capacity,
hmm
don't tell me how I should be over it. I mean, that's where the anger comes in,
Right.
you know.
But you cannot allow anybody to put a time limit on your
No,
grief.
no.
Then you get that anger and uh, bargaining. God, bring him back. Take me.
Yes, yes.
God, what happened here? But really the anger that comes into your life at that point, a lot of that, if you stick to that particular portion of your grieving process, you are just leading yourself into a life of bitterness and resentment. You can't stay angry.
No,
You can't stay angry at the doctors, at the hospitals, or anybody else.
right.
You've got to be able to move through that. And then bargaining. You start talking about what ifs and if onlys, and you know this is just a line of defense, really, to keep your emotions kind of locked down. You want it helps you to postpone that sadness and confusion and
Right.
everything.
Yeah, I've gone through the what ifs. What if he would have pulled through this?
hmm
I know many of the doctors up there said your husband's very sick and he has a long road to go. And I thought to myself, will he be able to? You know, I think back, if he would have pulled through, he wouldn't have wanted to have to go through all that he had to go through to get better.
hmm
And, you know, Dennis always talked about heaven.
right.
He knew a lot about heaven, and he was ready whenever it was his time to go. He was ready for it. He was looking forward to it, actually.
hmm
And so, keeping that in mind, that he's where he always wanted to be, he's home,
hmm
has helped me get through it a lot.
and having written a lot of Dennis's life story, it's a better home than he ever grew up in.
Yes,
you know
yes.
Dennis had a rough life. He lived a very rough life and came from a very poor family, and there wasn't a lot of love expressed in the home.
He did not feel the love. There might have been love there, but Dennis never felt the love. And
hmm
that was what was so sad because, you know, he didn't, Dennis had been through so many tr- trials, can we say?
Lots of trials.
Lots of trials in his lifetime. And it's a lot of his choice,
hmm
you know, the drugs, the alcohol, uh, the robberies, the thievery, everything was his choice.
hmm
But when I met him, like I told you earlier, I didn't believe half of his stories because they just seemed so out of whack. And I was like, what? But the more I got to know him and began to love him, I realized that he was telling the truth about a
hmm
lot of it. And, you know, he
he
never,
he grew up rough, but he grew up with at loving people.
right. And I'll tell you something that a lot of people don't know. Dennis had a hard time when we first met and started dating. He had a hard time opening up and loving. And he even told me, I'm not going to love you the way you want to be loved. I said, okay, we'll see. We'll
hmm
see about that. But what really turned him around was I got him a puppy. Well, actually, I got my son a puppy that lived with us, and Dennis fell for that puppy.
hmm
And that puppy showed him unconditional love that he had never had before.
yeah.
And that softened his heart to be able to love again. And then when he found the Lord, that put so much more love into him that anytime you were around him, he just poured out with love. And I have a lot of people telling me, you know, the one thing I miss about Dennis is his hugs
hmm
because his hugs showed the love.
hmm
And
And Dennis had no qualms about walking up to you in the Walmart and giving you a hug and praying for you because
Exactly.
he knew where he was going and he
Yes.
wanted to share that with people.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he was a hugger. I mean, that's the one thing I miss. You know, I have many videos. We did a show like this too called Crosswalk of Hope. And I have many videos that I can always turn back on and hear his voice. But the
Hmm.
one thing that I can't hear or feel is the hug.
Right.
And he had a way of hugging, you know. And the guys here used to say, hug like Dennis, you know. So,
You know, then you get into a depression stage.
yeah.
Has the depression hit you so much since
I
Dennis
would
passed?
say it's coming on now. You know, it's 2 years later. Of course, you realize, okay, it is
It,
happening,
you know,
and it did happen, and he's
right.
not walking in that door. And then you just kind of get, you know, you kind of get down. And I have a couple of real good friends right now that really help and pull me up from that. But depression does come in, and I'm fighting it.
Yeah,
But
because that's really a quiet stage that most people get to, and it's been long enough now that people think that it's not affecting you, and probably right now is when it's affecting you
yeah,
the
it's
most.
hitting. It's hitting this year.
Hmm.
And I'm just staying in the Word, reading good books. I have many people that have given me books to read. And
Hmm.
when they give me a book, I take it as this is a gift from God. You need to read this and figure out
Right.
what's going on. So I do read everything everybody gives me, and it has helped a lot to know that there's other people that have been through this too. I'm not the only one in the world.
Hmm.
So,
And fine, we rely on the Lord. We
yes.
always have relied on the Lord. But I'm telling you right now, if you're depressed and you need an antidepressant, go see your doctor.
Yeah.
If you can't pull yourself up out of that depression, you need some help.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of things medically that I may not agree with, but that's one thing that I think a doctor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever, if you are that depressed and you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, then you need to get assistance with that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
um, then you kind of come into acceptance. I accept the fact that my son is gone. I don't spend as many days crying now as I did before, and I'm sure you have probably experienced that. You kind of come to accept the fact that he's not coming home again, haven't you?
Yeah, and I remember the first day that I went without crying. I
Hmm.
just thought it was such a milestone. Wow, I made it through, you know, that night I was like, wow, I didn't cry today. I made it through today,
Hmm.
you know, but it comes in waves.
Right.
And you can think you're doing just great. And then you hear a song on the radio or a friend reaches out to you, and it's like the wave hits and you
Hmm.
can't stop sometimes. But I am getting better about stopping it. It isn't like a 30-minute cry like it used to be. You know, I pull myself together a little quicker now.
Hmm.
And I look at that. I look at every little thing as an accomplishment to get through this.
Hmm. You
So,
know, uh, I know a lot of my son's friends call me on his birthday and um, Mother's Day and Father's Day and everything else because my son always called me on Father's Day. He and his father didn't get along, and those days my heart feels good because they have taken the time to remember I'm still here.
yeah.
But I had 89 of those people running in and out of my house over the years, so
Yes.
they all called me mama anyway. But um, that makes me feel good and smile a little bit that he meant enough in their lives that they reach out and remember me and they
Yes.
come and see me on my birthdays and things like that.
Yeah. I remember the first year on Dennis's birthday. I woke up that morning and I thought, okay, it's going to be a hard day because I always made his birthday special, always chocolate cake with chocolate icing. And, you know, I always tried to make his birthday special as he would make mine special. And I remember I was dreading that day so much. And I thought, okay, I just got to go downstairs and I just got to make this day, just get through this day. And as I walked downstairs, I heard a knock on my back door, and I opened the door, and it was his grandson. And he said, I'm here to make this day easier for you. He said, let's go out and get something to eat. And so him and another friend of my husband's took me out to eat that day. And I'll tell you that I had the best time, and it just that they took the time. Now, this grandson's from Oklahoma. He drove all the way just to take me out to lunch. And that day, it was like, wow, people do care. Because as you're going through this, people don't know what to say. So a lot of times they don't call you, or they don't see you, or they don't come by. And, you just feel very lonely. But for them to take time out in their day to take me out to lunch was just the best day I had had since he had passed.
I find people, they get so silent when someone dies, and it's like, this is the time that you need to reach out to those people that have
Yes.
lost someone.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have the words or the training to get them through a section of their life or anything of that nature, but don't forget them.
Yeah.
And don't make the individual forget their loved one, saying, let's talk about something else,
Yeah. No,
you know.
that person needs to talk about that.
Mhm.
And that was the thing. I had a lot of people reach out to me, I'd say the first 3 weeks. But after that, it just stopped because, like I said, they don't know what to say. They don't want to say something to upset you. But just them calling and saying, hi, I was thinking about you today. It makes
It makes a world of
it
difference,
does. It makes a world of difference. And
and even if you're close to somebody, you live close to them and they've lost someone, take a few minutes of your day and just go and sit and have a cup of coffee with them.
right.
Or, even if it's just go over some evening and watch a movie with them, just be present.
Yeah. And let them talk.
Right.
That's what they need. They need to talk through it. And my first year, that was the hardest thing, was being able to talk to somebody without them changing the subject on me or saying, let's talk about something else. So, yeah, if you know somebody that's hurting and that has lost somebody, reach out to them. And don't worry, you're not going to say nothing. And if you do, and if they cry, let them cry.
Yeah. You have to be able to get your feelings out that way. And like I say, just being there is probably 90% of what an individual needs,
Yes.
because they forget, everybody thinks that you should forget in a certain amount of time. Okay, they died last year, you're over it, move on. That's not the case. So frequently that is not the case. I've known people who seem perfectly fine on the outside or something, and it may have been 10 years since their loved one died, and you say their name and they break down in tears still.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
because they've not been granted the opportunity to work through it.
There you go. That's it exactly. Now, when Dennis did pass, I was thinking to myself, wow, I got to stay in this big house. It's going to be so lonely. But his son moved in with me. And I think that helps so much, having somebody there. If I was in that big house by myself, I probably would have gone stir crazy. It helped just knowing that somebody else was in that house. And for the first year, I didn't like being alone in that house at all.
Yeah, you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere out
Yeah,
there.
and when I was there by myself, it was tough. And there were few nights that I was there by myself, and I just pushed through it. And I tell you, the hardest thing for me was to go to bed. I mean, I could get to sleep,
Yeah.
but to get in that bed
Right.
and to, it was just it was a hard step for me to take. And for the first 2 weeks, I slept on the couch. I couldn't even go in my bedroom, let alone, sleep there. So it's a process, and
Yeah.
you just have to go through every phase of the process.
But you still come out stronger on the other end, don't
Yes,
you?
I feel stronger today. I feel
Yeah.
stronger than I was this time last year. Um, I think I'm in the process of moving on and going forward. And that's the key. Go forward. Don't go back.
Yeah. And one of the things you have to remember also, when you've lost a loved one, like Becky lost her husband, don't tell somebody, don't make that some person move on. I did law firm duties for almost 30 years and did a lot of probate and special needs trusts and things of that nature. And I found so many families, dad died, and so automatically they want to come in and move mom someplace. Don't do that to somebody,
Yeah.
okay? Let them have at least a year to grieve in their own home. If they are physically capable of staying there and have the mental capacity to stay there, I mean, you are a very healthy woman. Um, you know, that, if they want to stay there, then let them do it. Do not make any big decisions in that first year.
That I had a pastor tell me that after he had passed, he said, "If I can give you any advice, the advice would be don't make any major decisions in the first year."
Hmm.
And I tried to stick to that.
You
But
did pretty good.
yeah, I think I did pretty good. But yeah, that's good advice, I think, because you have that fog. You're in a fog for, you
Hmm.
know, and some days I wake up and I feel like I'm still in that fog. It one day I can be just fine. The next day, I feel like I'm lost again.
Hmm.
So, you know, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up, but I know I'm going to move forward,
Yep.
you know.
I haven't decided what I'm going to be when I grow up either, so we're good.
Well, good.
Yeah, but you just have to remember to treat yourself with compassion.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you have a problem with moving on to another portion in life, and then seek support.
Yeah.
Find you a women's group. If you lost your husband, find you a women's group of ladies who are widowed. Go find some other group. If you like to play cards, you can find a senior center all the time. They'll let you sit down and play a game of cards normally.
Yes. Yes.
And keep your friends and your family close to you. You
Yeah.
know,
That's hard to do because a lot of times you just want to be alone, and you push away a lot
hmm
of people because you want to be alone. You don't want to, you don't want to involve them.
hmm
You feel like you're going to be a burden if you involve them
or you're going to bring them down.
or bring them down. Yes.
But if you have somebody that has lost someone, take the time to reach out. And
Yes.
and find, we talk about the Lord a lot on this show. We are both pastors. We both strongly believe in the Word. But even if your loved one did not know the Lord, does not mean they're banned to hell by any
No.
stretch of the
No.
imagination.
No, you're absolutely right.
There's a time when they will go in front of the Lord, and even if you think they did not know anything about the Lord, or that you're not going to see him in heaven, Becky knows she'll be walking with Dennis in heaven. I know I'll be walking with my son in heaven. But
Yes.
even if they had never even heard of the Bible, there is still a chance that
Yes.
they'll be walking with you.
Right. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And you said reach out. When I see somebody that has lost a husband, for instance, I make it a point on Facebook to private message them and
Mm-hmm.
tell them that I'm here if they want to talk. You and I both have had a close friend that
Mm-hmm.
she lost her husband, and so I've reached out to anybody that I see that is going through it, because it might be just that one word you say that makes their day,
Mm-hmm.
and they need days. So I try to do that quite often, is reach out to people that I see have lost their husband, because, and maybe that's where God's pointing me in that direction. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel a passion to help, because a lot of people don't know what it's like unless you've been through it.
Yeah. I ended up learning a lot about the grief process and so forth through my work at the law firm, but just expanded on it when I went to being a pastor. It's like
Yes.
you can see in the Word where the Lord doesn't want you to spend your life sad.
No.
No, the
Mm-mm.
joy of the Lord is our strength.
It is.
So,
And
and we would just have to go on with that. Because then that's another part of the grieving process and being able to work yourself up and keep yourself happy and keep yourself moving, because after that depression, you're going to get into that upward turn in life.
Yeah.
Things don't hurt so bad. And, I've got something that's making me smile and making me happy.
Yeah. I remember when I finally found my joy, it was like, the men, we run a ministry and we have men that get out of jail and we help them get on their feet. That was what Dennis and I were doing at the time. And I continued to run it and I'm still running it. But I remember the men in the house asking me to come to Bible study. And I'd say, no, I can't. No,
Hmm.
no. Because they get up every morning at 6:30 for Bible study. I said, no, no, I can't. And then one day something told me, just go.
Hmm.
Set your alarm, get up and go. So I went, and within a week of going every morning, I started getting that joy back again.
Hmm.
And I started smiling again. And I just remember how that made me feel. At first, it made me feel guilty. And then I thought to myself, no, I can't feel guilty for being happy.
No.
You know?
And if you were unhappy about going to a Bible study, Dennis had just come back this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so getting in the Word
Hmm.
helped a lot at that time. And, the more I get into the Word, the more joy I feel. And I don't feel so alone
Hmm.
because I know the Lord's with me.
Right.
And I know in my heart, Dennis is with me,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. So you've come into that reconstruction and working through stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you've finally gotten to the point where you accept what has happened. You
Yes.
don't have to like it.
Mm-mm.
It will never make you happy, but you have accepted that and you know that there's hope for a future.
Yes. Yeah, there is hope for a future. And Dennis would want me to have a future.
Hmm.
I mean, he wouldn't want me to stop. I mean, he wouldn't have stopped. I often wonder what it would have been like if it was me that went and him stayed here. And I can't think that way. I have to just, I know that he would want me to go on, and that's what I'd have to do.
Dennis would keep on being Dennis and
Yeah.
keep on going on.
Yeah.
And he would raise every one of those guys at the Hope House, or Crosswalk of Hope, um, up to know that you were standing right beside him.
Yeah.
They'd know that you were in his life and what was
Yes.
going on.
Yes, and that's what I do now too. We tell stories about Dennis. I mean, we still say, "Well, Dennis would do this way or that way," And I don't know when that'll leave, but I'm okay with it. To this day, I can talk about him without tears. I
Hmm.
can sit through this without tears
Yeah,
because I know that he's looking down, and I know he's proud of where I've gone and what I've done.
true. I think Dennis would be very happy with where you're at right now. I know you're getting ready to make some major life changes, probably.
Yes, yes.
Spending more. You have a disabled daughter, I do believe.
Yes,
Yeah. That.
in Kansas City.
Hmm.
So, I'm looking to get closer to them, and they need me, and I need them.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. We all need each other, whether we want to admit it or not.
exactly, exactly.
That's one of the things about the world today. They've tried to make it to where you think you don't need anybody.
Right,
And, so we've lost that sense of community and that closeness.
right.
And, we just need to remember that we all need a hand sometimes,
Yep,
or we all just need a hug.
a hug.
The entire world needs a Dennis hug.
Yes, we miss our Dennis hugs.
Uh, Dennis always made me smile, and he was willing to create my ice cream freezer. So.
Yeah. Amen.
Yes, I do have one of those you still have to crank, okay?
Yeah.
And Dennis was really good about that. I like that about him.
I think it's because he had to do it when he was young. Brought back
Probably.
memories.
It made him stay busy anyway.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you will survive.
Yeah, you'll get through it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a rough road, but you'll get through it.
Just remember that, don't go through it alone.
No.
If you need somebody to talk to, if you haven't got somebody close to talk to, or you haven't got a pastor or a psychiatrist or whatever the case may be, that you feel close enough to that you can bare your entire heart to them. It's okay. Call me. I'm fine.
Yeah, me too. I'm fine too. I've been through it. I know how to get through it.
That's right. Anyway, we thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you next week.
Thank you.